I'm okay. I'm waiting to see what's happening south of the border. How would you interpret what's going on today? We were expecting to hear that they were being implemented, but we're hearing nothing now.
Of course, we're all waiting anxiously to see what message the president will deliver, and I'm no different than every other Canadian in that regard. We have very little information other than what you've already reported, seen delivered in the White House yesterday. As I understand it, there's been a chill in some diplomatic channels, so I think we're just going to have to wait and see. But regardless of the outcome and regardless of the president's decision, one thing is certain: we need to be ready, but we also need to ensure that we're strong and unified in the approach, strategic in the response, responsible in the response. But also the message that I've been delivering to the federal government, to the Prime Minister, is the federal government needs to meet the moment to be there for workers across the country, for families across the country that will be impacted by this. This is a historical moment. It's an existential moment for Canadians, and it rightfully deserves the federal government to stand up and to be there in a supportive.
What would you like to see what would you feel the government had met this moment? What do they need to do, the federal government?
Well, dealing in hypotheticals, certainly, but if there is the impact that we feel there could be with respect to 25% across the board, the federal government has to be there to support workers as we try to diversify our markets, as we try to look to other buyers around the world for our products, because it will have a devastating impact. It'll have a devastating impact in Southern Ontario. Here in Newfoundland and Labrador, it'll have a devastating impact in our fisheries, in our rural communities. And it's not just about standing up and increasing unemployment insurance, employment insurance. It's about being there for everybody who touches those rural communities, everybody who's involved in the industry, not just the harvesters or the plant workers, for example. It's the trucker, it's the people who buy ice and the supply chain, all of those rural communities. And that example, it's probably unique to us with crab in Newfoundland and Labrador, fisheries in Newfoundland and Labrador. But that's the same for auto workers in Southern Ontario. It's the same for farmers in Saskatchewan. It's across the board. And that's why it's incumbent upon the federal government to stand up and support workers across Canada. As a provincial government, we have limited levers available to us in terms of monetary policies or fiscal capacity within our own treasury to meet that. The country exists as a federation for moments like that. And I think they've heard the voice of premiers. I think they will be there to support workers. But this is a moment that we cannot be divided. We need to be united. And having the government support workers and families across the country will allow the flexibility for us to stay united and protect our sovereignty and our identity.
Are you worried? You've said a few times about being united. Are you worried about the fact that Trump has said that some of the tariffs may not go into effect? It might be less for oil, that it might break down our united front here in this country?
Certainly that's a concern. And I've said from day one, first of all, he conflates issues. This border issue was never really about the border. It's always about tariffs. We have to be very worried that he is attacking the country. He's attacking our identity. He's attacking who we are as Canadians, our values of the values that we love and endorse as Canadians. This is a full affront and assault to who we are. So in order to meet that challenge, we need to be united. And he is going to try to divide us by trying strategically to potentially divide different tariffs and the impact of different tariffs on different industries and different regions. That's where we need to come together stronger than ever before to protect who we are as Canadians. And I believe every Canadian, from coast to coast to coast, wants to meet that moment. No one wants to be an American here, certainly not me, and certainly no one that I represent.
And if this tariff does go into effect today, does Canada have to go hard on the retaliation? Do we bring in the plan that the government has talked about, the federal government has talked about, or should there be more?
I think that the federal government has said, and certainly the plan that they've shown us or led us to believe will be the response, is firm, strong, a position of strength, position of unity, but is responsive, not escalatory, and responsible, meaning that it recognizes the regional sensitivities and specificities. It recognizes the industrial sensitivities and specificities. And no one industry, no one region should bear the full brunt of President Trump's tariffs. And I do believe that the federal government has thought about that strategically. They've thought about it from a perspective, from an economic perspective, but importantly as well, they've thought about, retaliatory tariffs in the political link, in the political dynamic. And I think that's equally important when you see how President Trump has responded in the past, whether it's his previous administration or in his election campaign. Getting into his sphere of influencers and his sphere of influence is incredibly important. And that's why there's this, I do believe the federal government has thought about those three levels of tariffs, if you will, and how to respond in a responsive and responsible, strong way on behalf of the need.
All right, Premier, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Andrew Furey is the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador.